the work and skills are going to start to have to reshape around this kind of human-machine partnership, this augmentation, collaboration, whatever you want to call it. Because I always say there's a pyramid of value, and the machines can do more and more of it, and the humans have to move to the top and add value using the technology. There's no point fighting, you're going to lose that battle. So that is going to become really quite important. And welcome to the Implement AI podcast, the podcast where we explore the impact of AI on your business. I'm Piers, Linney, and alongside my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla, we cover the real-world applications and impact of how AI can be practically applied to drive growth and efficiency in your organization. We cut through the jargon to focus on actionable strategies and use cases to highlight the transformational power of AI. Let's dive into today's conversation. I'm Piers.
I'm Aalok.
So this is the 2026 predictions podcast. We are obviously going to be going through 2025 as well, and what we said and how did we do. But let's just give a few updates. So Aalok's back from Mumbai. He's been out there networking, buying lots of the same shirt, the same shirt, networking. But we're actually we're all going to be in Dubai at the end of January, February for various reasons. And we're also looking at doing an event in Dubai. So if you're in Dubai or UAE generally, you can get to Dubai on the 2nd or 3rd of February. We're not sure exactly yet. We're going to do an event, and it's going to be very similar to our London, Manchester event. So your future digital workforce, come and talk to us and learn how to understand AI, really the basics of it, and how to start thinking about implementing it, and then how you actually implement it. So we are doing an event in London with similar sort of content on the 22nd of January. So if you haven't signed up yet, they are really well attended events. We've only fit about 70 people in, so it goes pretty quickly as we approach it. That's going to be near Moorgate, 22nd of January in London. And then if you're in Dubai, UAE, well, hopefully, it's not fully firmed up yet, doing an event on the 2nd or 3rd of Feb. So, anything else?
No, I think like it's been an exciting year, and there's been a lot of things kind of going on, and Mumbai was quite dynamic. So yeah, excited, happy to be back here and getting crack on with everything.
Yeah, we're not quite ready to go to Mumbai, are we? We'll start with UAE and maybe East Coast US. So this show, we're going to do a 2025 kind of roundup and insights predictions, but we're going to start with insights actually. So I think it's quite important for us to sort of walk you through our experiences and insights over the last year, given the fact that this is literally all we do all day is talk to companies about AI adoption, implementing AI agents, workflows, processes, ROI. Where do you start? How do you get a team to understand the technology? How do you get a team to work with us to implement it? So we have a lot of insights, and those insights are essentially reflected in the design of our AI OS platform and also our methodologies. But if you're new to the podcast, follow us on LinkedIn, especially a lot of content on there. Go to our resources center, download the white papers. If you're not new to the podcast, please leave a review. That's your New Year's resolution 2025 should have been to leave a review, and you're running out of time. So please do leave a review on Apple especially. It's really important, really does help us. So let's get into it. So let's talk about Aalok. So where is it at? So, we talk a lot about this, don't we? But we've got a meeting today of our team to go through where we're at, more on the kind of implementation. But what are your insights from this year then? So I'd say that the high level is really about, there's more understanding of AI, there's more interest in it. People want to adopt it, they want to talk to us, they want to implement it, they want the content, they want the know-how. But then very quickly, when you interact, it's quite interesting what happens, isn't it, in terms of the process. Organizations ready for it? Are they set up? Can they actually interface with us? We have the know-how, the people, the structure. And then they kind of go from, I was in a meeting yesterday with a group of people, and they were saying, oh, an AI agent could just do this. I'm like, yes, keep it simple when an ROI. And then 3 minutes later, they heard about machine learning, and they've gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour. And that's not the way to go about it. But share your insights for the year.
Yeah, so I would basically say that there's kind of two things kind of happening. So I think one, there's been a consistent news flow within the media about the breakthroughs in AI, and then even in the kind of public domain, you've got Nvidia, which is single-handedly making sure that the economy is kind of, it keeps rising and people don't think there's a bubble and different things. So the mainstream awareness of AI and this revolution is very high. So that plays into what's also been happening. We've got this slide you always present where you've got like the PR frontier, the technological frontier, and you've also got the operational frontier of AI, like what's capable and what's possible. And what I would say is that, like, given the fact that so many people use ChatGPT, like when I was in India, for example, I was talking to some people and they were even complaining, some of the younger relatives, I was talking to them, it's quite interesting. They were saying, yeah, ChatGPT is a bit sycophantic, but this is better and Gemini works with this. So everybody's accustomed to it. So number one, many people already use that. So their kind of comfort level with it as a technology has increased, okay? Then at the same time, certain levels of technology, let's say computer use agents or voice agents, more people have encountered something or seen something or heard something, or they've used AI in voice mode. So then that kind of like uncanny barrier or whatever you have in their head is kind of been broken. So then they're more accepting of it. But then this leads into the kind of next bit where they're like, so where do I apply it first, basically, right? And so then you see these companies where essentially any kind of new solution like this is going to be bought by a team. Like it's not going to be bought by one person, it'll be bought by a team. And that means the team has to have a conversation around what's going to be our AI strategy, what's going to go. So
Just on that,
yes,
I'll just butt in there. So, and that team is not your IT department. That's what,
no,
because
no, no,
we've got to
no.
move on from that.
Yeah, it's not because it impacts all elements of the business. And for example, some customers that we recently came on board, they had people go and present to their board, literally, like about what how to go about it. So the point is, these conversations are now taking place where they're actually taking it seriously, and at the same time, also people have more comfort levels. So I'd still say we're very early in this space, but more and more people are taking it very seriously because I watched a couple of documentaries where people talk about, 25% of the work is going to be automated, or even 30% of the work automated, 40% of the work automated. And these are like not tech specific places, and I was reading a paper yesterday about OpenAI talking about like what percentage of GDP work can be done by AI. So I would basically say that like the seriousness that people are taking it has increased this year. And the conversations, but have only just started essentially. So to know that leads into the rest of what we want to discuss basically now.
But going from that conversation, and I agree, more and more people want to have a conversation about it. I have two slides. One is the operation, one is the PR frontier, the technological frontier, which is jagged, depending on what you do. And then you've got the operation frontier where it works. Then I've got another slide I often use, which is that 2x2 sort of matrix where the bottom, you've got ROI and you've got the sort of technological frontier essentially. And the bottom left box where we try and play is where the technology works. If you keep it simple, keep it in that box, and there's a meaningful ROI. It's not off the chart, but it really is quite meaningful. And well, compared to sort of humans doing it, it is off the chart.
Of course,
If you stay in that box, you can deploy the technology pretty quickly. But there is a tendency, let's face it, to think that AI, well, okay, it can do that, but also can it go and get me a coffee and do my ironing?
I think the key thing is that like it's what we call like a clean use case, a defined use case versus like a messy use case. And the truth of the matter is that we're having worked with many different businesses across different areas. Most businesses have a poorly defined process, and that's not meant as a criticism of anything. It's basically held together with judgments and intuition from different team members, which is fine. But then when you start losing some team members, the quality of what you're doing disappears. And then when you're trying to get AI to do that, the team they don't have a clear spec of what they want. And then also you have situations where the same problem is happening across three channels, let's say email, phone calls, and messaging or something like this, or tickets. So what needs to happen is there does need to be a bit of a thought about how can we kind of like build our future which will be AI powered. We've got a current we've got a future There has to be some kind of reimagining of certain elements of the departments and different things like this. Because if you just try and bolt it into the kind of mess of like, oh, is the human going to do it or is the AI going to do it? And whoever jumps on the inbox first, it won't work basically, right? Like, so I think that we cover that a bit later on, but there needs to be not just a thought about how we can use it in our business, but a rethinking of like how our workflow might need to look like, basically, to then fully harness the benefit of AI. Because it's like trains, for example, right? When the train technology came along, you have to have railway tracks, isn't it? Right? It doesn't go on a road. If you put a train on the road, it ain't going to work, isn't it? Because you've got all sorts of blockers. But in order to get like fast intercity travel, you've created the railway tracks, and then you've got no cars going on there, basically, isn't it? So in the same way, there needs to be some thought around what is the kind of railway track version of your workflow which could be AI enabled, not how can you just pass it into traffic like I was in Mumbai. And I was laughing actually. I was talking to them about self-driving cars. I was talking with somebody who works for a mapping company in Bangalore. That's basically they're doing a deal with Tata Motors to actually like help with self-driving cars. But honestly, you can't do self-driving cars there because like everyone's driving in all directions at certain points, basically, right? You
Oh, right. Yeah, there's no rules. Yeah, you're right. Well, and you got railways, and you got to have the stations, and you got to have all that
Yes,
infrastructure.
but that's a different approach. But when you dip that, you can then transport more people predictably in between cities, right? But if you try and stick the train on the road, it's basically stuck behind a bus and some cars, basically, isn't it? So,
Or if you think, well, I've got a train now, can it on the way? Can it do this and do that?
yes. Can it also have a crane on top of it? And then could it have, and then could it also then have a car that could drive off at a certain point? You have to pick and choose. Like those things can be done, but they'll be separate things basically. And I think this is the key thing. Like people need to educate themselves. There's a piece of content I'm going to put together actually. I was started outlining it when I was in India, basically about the palette of AI. Like what are all the things you can do basically? So then people understand the discrete elements of it rather than thinking, oh, AI is just a magical glue that can do multiple things because it doesn't work like that, basically, right? So I probably will put that together and I'll share that.
Also, we talked about it earlier, is where it's not just a panacea for the gaps in your organization. You might think, well, we've got all this going on. Humans are quite good at doing that, but this doesn't really happen. Can they go and do that? And you've got to really, as Aalok said, really think about what is a clean, linear workflow an AI can just get on with, so you don't have to worry about it.
There's another bit as well. Like I find that like because many entrepreneurs have ideas, but then let's just say during their kind of operational marathon of running the business day to day, they run out of the energy, the creativity, whatever like this. A lot of businesses have also seen when they work with us, they're like, oh, I'd like to try this or I'd like to try that. And that's great, basically. But the thing is, that's not a proven business unit in their business. They just want to experiment and see, can they develop business in this way or can they make this work? And then often you can get a result, but that requires some iteration because you're figuring it out as you kind of go with it. So the other thing that people have to understand is that, like, just like if you hired 3 people and said, okay, develop a new business unit, research some people, find some people, and reach out to them. That's going to take time to commercially yield fruit, basically. But you'll get interesting signals along the way. So again, a business needs to think to themselves, am I replicating something I've already got, but reimagine it in an AI first way? Or do I want to test new things I don't have the bandwidth to do? But in which case I have to understand the learning is the outcome, basically, right? I think
And accept the amount of work, because you're
that's the point
piloting
of innovation.
something.
That's the point of innovation, basically, right? So I think what's nice is that businesses that couldn't innovate before now can do that, but they don't necessarily have the right framework or mindset for how to run those projects and sprints, basically, right? Because that's where you typically want to try a few different things and then see what works and double down on that thing, basically, right? That's generally the way it would work.
If your organization, you think of implementing, adopting AI, and you're listening to this, just think about that. Think about the way you interact with the company that implement AI. It's not your tech team. It's not your IT department. If you want to implement as a sales agent, for example, you're going to need someone from sales, process, methodology, how do you sell? You're going to need somebody from marketing, tone of voice, content, knowledge base. You're going to need someone from the tech team, CRM, APIs, and probably someone from the C-suite to make a decision about actually doing it. So the interaction with an organization like ours isn't as simple as it is when it's an IT project. And you've got to think about, how do you go about doing that?
We give the information to make it simple for you, but what the point that you're making, Piers, is an important point. It's a joined up conversation because everybody's got a different viewpoint on how that should be, basically, right? But there needs to be an agreed thing for this is how we want to proceed, basically.
And we mentioned in the last podcast, we won't go through it again, the ABCD framework. So it's everything basic access all the way through to E's kind of evolution. And we've done that. So what we do, we sort of say, look, A, B, kind of the basics. C is kind of adding some complexity. And D is where you're adding kind of, much more data and the evolution, really. Where can you really take it? So start small. I have another slide with decks we often do. Think big, start small. Right, let's go on to predictions. How did we do in 2025? So we'll rattle through these and we'll focus more on what we're thinking about next year. So 2025 obviously was going to be the adoption curve. It takes off, right? Again, it's Amari's law, isn't it, with technology? It always takes slightly longer. Do you think, well, can take a lot longer sometimes than you think it's going to for new technology to be adopted. But once it is adopted, its growth is a lot faster than you expected. And I say that AI and AI agents, especially kind of what we do, is probably somewhere in the middle of that. So you're seeing a lot of depends where you are as well, actually. You see a lot of interest, like you said, Aalok, and adoption. So my partner was in New York like last week, and there's like huge billboards everywhere, literally in Manhattan, about AI agents and different sectors, different types doing things. Is it? Yeah, literally. You had, in SF, they're on the back of buses, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Even on pavement,
So that's probably you
but
hallucinating.
no, no, but this is the key. So we talked about 2025 being the year that adoption takes off. I think what's always interesting to look at is like, what is the innermost loop of technology? So the innermost loop of technology is basically AI coding agents improving AI models, which improve AI coding agents, which improve AI models, right? That has taken off a lot. You look at like the kind of the powerful models like Gemini or other ones coming through, or you look at like the Claude code, or you look at like the Lovables. All of that element, because it's the fastest innermost loop of technology, has been exploding. And vibe coding, I think, was the word of the year. Last year it was manifest, basically, right? I think like in the English dictionary, basically. So I would say that like that understanding of adoption and prototyping has taken off, because you see it in films, video, even computer games and different things like this. But it's taking off in the innermost loop where it's code into code or code into media, basically. It's not taking off where agents are hitting human resource and friction of organizations yet. I think that's the thing to think about, basically, right? Like,
Well, we'll talk about this a bit later. Impact on jobs. We just don't see it yet. We talk to SMEs or quite large enterprises all day long, and you look at them and you're not seeing, you might see some AI in a SaaS they're using, but you're not seeing properly deployed AI agents that are augmenting and working with humans in a kind of a partnership, right?
yeah, no, and like I was listening to a very nice interview with Jensen Huang he did on the Joe Rogan podcast, and like he has made some excellent points. For example, like where he talked about like people talk about self-driving cars taking jobs, for example, from drivers, and then he made the point that like, well, what's the job of a chauffeur? Basically, it's not just driving. It might be security. It might be helping you run errands. It might be doing different things. It might be acting as a proxy for you. So all those things will still exist. So I am very confident and bullish on the fact that like if people have the right mindset and adopt themselves, they're not just doing a single task, but doing multiple tasks, there will always be opportunities, basically, right? So
I'd say that the 2025, just like the technological frontier, it was jagged, depending on how AI took off, really. So, and linked to that, last year you talked about the rise of the AI agent and agentic workflows. So it is rising, but I'd say that 2025, it wasn't a year of overall adoption where everybody was doing this, was it?
not adoption, but agent washing has happened, where basically everything has become like, just like before it was like when
Gen-
green, everything became, yeah, everything is now agentic, basically,
Yeah,
right? Like so before everything was like eco or green or
yeah.
whatever like
Dot
this, and then
com. Yeah.
yeah, or .com, basically, exactly that. This year was everything was agent washing, basically, where everything became like agentic. Now, obviously, agentic is a spectrum, basically, but the thing is that mainstream awareness is there, basically, right? And people are understanding of that as a concept, which is quite big, actually, because even people that didn't know about this stuff do know about it. So I would say it's there in the awareness, but definitely not in terms of like actually delivering or people actually taking that into their companies yet and stuff like that. It's going to be a decade at least. It's a whole new platform shift, basically.
And then we've talked about, mentioned it. So there's sort of reported impacts on employment and call centers. Now, what's interesting, there's more and more data about junior roles, new graduates struggling to find work. Now, whether that is AI, and I'm not entirely sure it all is, or it is just economics, I don't know, in terms of the actual demand for employment. I'm not sure. But there's more and more talk, more and more noise about the fact that entry roles there's less demand for them. So there's probably some truth in that, but I'm not sure.
One thing I have seen with younger graduates is I follow a few on LinkedIn, and I have seen, and I also talking to some of my young relatives and different things. I can kind of see that like there's three things that are kind of happening in parallel for the job market for juniors. One, companies potentially overhired before, and so are naturally letting some people attrition. Essentially, that's one thing. Two, they are aware of AI. They don't have clear use case for AI, but they're holding off on hiring because they're not sure whether AI could do something. And then three, there's a skills and performance mismatch right now, basically, right? So the issue is that like young graduates who are who would be have a particular skill set and essentially be shadowing a senior, the seniors are using AI more and more necessarily. And then potentially they're thinking, I don't necessarily want to play that same role as I was doing before. And so they're holding off on hiring. So what I see is that like if a junior is coming into the job market with the same expectation and the same skills that they had before, the time has gone now. And then you add on top of that frictions of cost of rising of employment taxes, and harder to get let go of people because of probation periods, stuff like this. Like in the UK, they're changing something, isn't it? Where it's harder to dismiss somebody, and you have to take more precautions in the first 6 months, and that adds more rigor and that adds more cost and overhead to the company before it hires someone. So all these things make people think twice before hiring. So what I think is it's absolutely not because of AI directly, but it's one of three different elements here. And I think the key thing is that junior people have to almost re-engineer their kind of value proposition to be AI knowledgeable, but then also malleable to help and join into domains. But if you're going with I'm expecting that firm to teach me everything and I don't know much and I'm going to be a junior in a role for 4 months, I think that value proposition is not very attractive for most employers.
Yeah, we talk to a lot of companies. I don't see them directly correlation between not hiring juniors and using AI, because a lot of them aren't using AI yet. So I think that is coming though, especially some of the
They have
things that
said,
I'm
but all the companies we work with have said they want to scale X department without hiring more people.
Yeah,
So it is
we
a
hear that
goal,
all
basically.
the time, don't we? Yeah, we do not want to hire. That's true. Right. So emergence of sector leaders and best practices. I think we're seeing best practices, aren't we? And we're developing some of them, I think, hopefully. But we're not, I wouldn't say we're seeing
It's
sector
still
leaders.
very early.
Too
It's
early,
still
isn't it?
very early. It's too early, basically, because I think there hasn't been maturity of workflows. Even now, I saw that the OpenAI and Anthropic and a few other organizations created a kind of open source affiliation with Linux, to kind of create best practices for AI agents and different stuff like this. So it's very early because the technology is still being there. So this is there are some organizations which showed what they're doing in particular areas, and then even for example, Chamath Palihapitiya, he's got about 80-90 company where he's talking about he's working with more and more companies where they're using AI to kind of build some business software in in a much simpler and more cost effective way and quicker. So it's still very early. I think it's going to take another couple of years before people are yes, this works and it's made a meaningful difference as well, basically.
And number five, so AI voice adoption, a voice would lead to wider adoption. I think this is true to some extent because people hear it. Although I often say to people, I did as a presentation yesterday, the same one I mentioned earlier, where you're showing a voice demo and I'm looking at everyone's faces and I'm saying, right, don't just sit there thinking, does it sound like a human? Think, is the caller getting value? That's what you should be thinking. So I think voice is helping, but I'm amazed that voice isn't used more, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a very funny one, because there are companies which are doing millions of calls and different things like this, and then there are organizations which do it. And for example, it's also about specing the objective very clearly. Like for example, I called one restaurant booking software AI, and basically you can book the table for yourself, but then if you want to discuss allergies, it will transfer you to a person which doesn't answer the phone, or if you ask anything about the menu, it won't answer that. So I think you are seeing use cases where it's been specified quite clearly what it will do, what it will not do. But I think this is a very key thing. We see from our customers very good results from AI based on different elements for business development, reactivation, whatever like this. But if you're listening to the call and saying, is this a human or is this an AI? They are not meant to be listening exactly like a person. But the performance of the call worked very, very well in terms of the outcome. So I think people have to shift their mindset from does this sound like a human to does it book the appointment? Is it available all the time? Is it making this achievable? And is it helping the customer solve their problem, basically? Because ultimately that's what the goal is. So I think people are still, maybe some of the buyers or the company owners or people that are part of the buying committee are not clear on what measurement looks like, basically. And I understand if they're thinking, oh, it doesn't sound exactly like our humans, but the humans don't have the capacity anyway, basically. So I think there needs to be a bit more time for some other companies to kind of pull ahead, and then they'll realize, yeah, I'm staring at the wrong measuring stick, basically, because the measuring stick is, does it achieve the business function, basically, right? It's not, the measuring stick is not is it exactly like a human? Like for example, if let's say swimming, okay, if you're swimming with your arms and legs and kicking, that's one thing. But if you've got one of those fan things, basically, which pulls you through the water, that's not swimming, but you're moving through the water fast, basically, isn't it? Right. So I think the key thing is it's not going to be exactly the same, but the question is, does it achieve the objective? And that's the key thing, basically.
Yeah, and I think I will always say to you, listening to this, still record everything. Your voice
Oh, absolutely.
conversation is the best data you can get out of a customer or stakeholders, and be the conversations you got. If you're not recording them, you're just leaving literally leaving money on the table because you can analyze now to nth degree, which you couldn't do before. Another one is moving on, a shift towards data and systems awareness. We'll keep this one short. I still don't think people understand the value of their data and the importance of having access to it. It's amazing how many people talk to us and say, oh yeah, we're using this software that hasn't got a great API and our supplier doesn't really want to provide one.
I think also like people just don't understand like what data is, and they say, oh, we need to organize our data, and it's not that. You basically just need to record everything and then start doing tests to see like, can you generate useful insights from it? And then once you prototype that, you can then scale that in a different way.
Yeah, and you can AI is great at making order out of unstructured data. Right, computer use, one of your favorites. So it's one of ours. Was computer use will become usable during 2025? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely. I've already seen it like do very interesting things which you couldn't do before, where you're either automating the completion of forms or research, or and actually operating SaaS software as an agent, as a remote worker. This will become even more powerful, and I think that's very, very interesting.
The last one was, we think there'd be anything. So you have text to video or kind of models. It'd be anything to anything models. Now, I think in some ways this has been fudged. So you saw that in ChatGPT 5, you can have one prompt, and it would then kind of decide which model it kind of sends it off to. You've got Gemini, which is always multimodal. So it's not, I wouldn't say they're perfect anything to anything model, but you kind of can do that. Yeah.
Gemini is probably the closest, right? Because like I've seen examples where you can give it a Google Street View and then ask it to generate a 3D environment of that area. And I was talking, for example, to one of my younger cousins, and like he wants to be a game developer, and we were just talking about like the different ways that like how you can actually create first person shooter games using these kind of technologies and stuff like that now. So I do think that like Gemini is probably the first of that group, which is very, very powerful. And so yes, but it's a very small percentage of people that get the difference of what that is over ChatGPT.
It's amazing. So again, we talked to lots of millions of people, and you say, do you use a ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude? All that, quite a few hands go up. We say, do you use to generate an image? And half the hands go down. Do you generated a video with it? And then there's like one hand still kept up. So the point is, unless you see, we always say, there's no historical frame of reference for this technology. What we're doing, implement AI, nobody's ever done before. So unless you use it and see it, it's quite hard to believe it. But when you do that, you understand the power of it. Right, let's move into 2026 predictions without trying to repeat what didn't happen last year. So, right, so AI search. So that trend's already, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's just call it like we had the Amazon Prime effect, which happened with consumer D2C and everything like that, before where consumer expectations were shifted by buying on Amazon, and how that experience would be. Right now, you've got like agentic shopping, you've got ChatGPT is going to be putting adverts into their system, you've got Perplexity doing different bits, you've got that browser which will automate things for yourself. So I think the whole search experience, people know that they need to end up in generative engine optimization, not search engine optimization. I think that whole consumer interface to the internet is now more and more through ChatGPT or Google.
AI mode. Okay, that's where it starts now, isn't it?
Yes. So I think like that the AI first shopping and search experience is changed. Like you've already got agentic browsers, and I think next year that's going to take off even more. And what that's going to do is disrupt and upend even more kind of like products, services, and discovery of different things. Shopping will become agentified next year, much, much more, basically, right? Where people are like asking to book flights for them on their behalf. These things were like nice POCs shown in demos like a year ago or 2 years ago. But next year, more and more people will start doing that directly, basically.
It was amazing how many people that use ChatGPT and don't even know there's a shopping research mode. So if you go into ChatGPT, I don't know if it's in all of them, I think it is actually, but we use Pro, but if you've even got Plus, go in, it's called shopping research, and just tell it what you want, and it goes and does the research for you. So that is the beginning of the end of the internet as we know. So next year, I think the prediction is, when the next year, you're going to see that this is the de facto way in which people search and browse the internet, and then start to do things like shopping. The next prediction is you are going to see some industry leaders emerge, and we'll see industry leaders emerge because they are actively using AI. Now, it might not be an enormous company that we all know. It might be in specific sectors. But you're going to start to see some companies pull ahead because they're actively using this technology.
Yeah, I've seen a few examples of basically a services company which become AI powered essentially, right? In cybersecurity or other things like this. But the point is, what they're able to then do is deliver a faster and higher value service to their customers because they are primarily AI driven, essentially, right? And so I think that will change the traditional models. I've also seen, for example, recruitment companies where it's a two-sided marketplace where there's an AI talking to the candidates, there's AI talking to the recruiters, and at the same time, it's helping match in different ways. So absolutely, there's going to be novel leaders emerging in different sectors. There'll be startup companies, but they will be gaining velocity faster and offering better value than incumbents. Basically, they're trying to do it a different way. Absolutely.
And if you can go from being an incumbent, really embrace AI and change your model, which might mean some real structural change, and then use it, you're in a better place because you've got the data, you've got the insight, the experience, you've got
Exactly. You
people.
can launch a. You should launch almost like a pilot version
Yes,
of what you think could be to try and disrupt yourself a little bit.
exactly that. If you're going to start again, then people say, "Oh, really?" But Amazon did. Jeff Bezos did this with the Kindle. He tried to kill his book business, and yeah, I don't know to what extent that worked, but really do think about that. Next one, AI. I think this will happen. AI becomes a board level sort of imperative, right? There won't be a board, or shouldn't be, that isn't having a conversation, whether they actually start implementing it actively, but it's going to come up in every board meeting, or at least one board meeting throughout the year, about what are we doing when it comes to AI. And if that board's not having that conversation, not doing their job properly.
Absolutely, because essentially the key metrics are like revenue per employee, or if you're looking at for example, what are competitors in a market space doing? What's how can we achieve our growth targets? All of those things have to involve leveraging AI. So that is a strategic imperative, and you've even seen examples where there's been firms which aren't using AI, or they've had their market cap cannibalized by AI. For example, like some language instruction or some other areas, or even translation businesses and stuff like this. If they're on the reactive foot, it's a problem. But then other ones, if they've got an AI strategy, their stock price can go up, basically, isn't it?
Next one is, and we are seeing this ourselves, or you have to do this really, is that kind of work. People are going to start doing work rather than have this particular sort of jobs in a silo. The work and skills are going to start to have to reshape around this kind of human machine partnership, this augmentation, collaboration, whatever you want to call it. Because I always say there's a pyramid of value, and the machines can do more and more of it, and the humans have to move to the top and add value using the technology. There's no point fighting, you're going to lose that battle. So that is going to become really quite important. And the winners again won't just be those that implement AI, it'll be those who understand who have to structurally change in which they work with AI.
Absolutely, completely agree with that, because you have to it's like if you're trying to use a touchscreen computer but just use the keyboard, you're missing half the trick, basically, isn't it? Right. At the same time, if you've got like a voice enabled interface and you're just trying to type on it, again, you're missing the point. The point is you want to think how can you reimagine your customer support department, your research department, your analytics department, whatever it is like this, but be AI enabled. So you don't want to just bolt it onto part of your process. You want your whole process to be increasing capacity and velocity, basically, right?
Next one. So this is a little bit linked to earlier ones, but AI starts to drive growth within new business models. You see lots of AI startups. You might call some rappers, some a bit more than that. But you are going to start to see things where you could only do that with this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the whole thing that's going to start coming down. Many more new, novel, personalized services, experiences, media. Everything like that's going to be coming, and I think that's going to be very interesting, basically, because then you know you'll start to see what consumers actually want, basically, essentially, isn't it? Right? They're already experimenting with some of these kind of AI enabled videos, or it's like AI music. I'll give you an example. I actually like AI music. I've listened to some very cool examples of some hip hop songs which have been done in 60s soul versions and stuff like this. So there's going to be whole new kind of different business models and propositions and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely see that that's going to kind of come about this year.
Yeah, I think video is going to be, it's not quite there yet, but that's going to change. It's interesting seeing, Netflix and these big media mergers happening. You wonder what they're going to be doing in 3 years.
You remember that film, that Bandersnatch, right? That was almost a choose your own adventure, basically. When I was a kid, I used to read these books by Osborne, which was choose your own adventure, and it would literally be for example, you're a spy and you're trying to capture this guy. Do you want to pose as a diamond dealer, go to page 88, or do you want to pose as a Secret Service agent, go to page 54. And there's 21 possible endings depending on what you go with. Like, you could just imagine that those being turned into like first person 3D games driven by AI. And then it could even be you, like you invested in that Lost My Name. Now imagine that's actually you're in the video game, basically, isn't it? Right? Like, so all of those new things going to come.
Maybe not next year, but it's coming. One of my favorites, robots. So you're seeing more and more, maybe you're not, maybe we're in the AI bubble, but we see more and more of robots, right? And I don't care whether it's humanoid, whether it's a Waymo, because we're going to see Waymos in the UK quite soon. And I think, yeah, in 2026, and I think that when you see, Aalok, you were recording them recently, weren't you? When you see a driverless car, it's been a moment where you think, oh, hang on a minute, things are changing. So robots, aren't they? I think you're going to see more and more of them. You're going to see more humanoids, and humanoid hasn't got to be on legs always. You can have a humanoid torso on wheels that works in a factory because it just stands at one counter all day long doing his job. But you're going to start to see robots become far
Even
more.
coffee robots or whatever like this. Like the whole point is that like it's going to be an enormous category. Like, I was crossing the road in SF and there's like 2 Waymos, like waiting in the traffic light. And then I also was watching a video yesterday where the CEO of one robotics company in China was getting a sidekick
Oh, I
from a
saw that.
robot.
That's scary. That
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah. Like and then you got like drones and different things. Like, honestly, I mean, war of a different subject, but it's gonna be AI first, basically, right? Like
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm
that's
not sure what the rush is to deploy lots of kickboxing capable robots. But there you go. So robots, they're going to change our world. Robots, I always say that we have our destiny robot, and people look at it and they look and they go, "Oh, that's interesting." Take a selfie and they wander off. And I say it's like being in that famous picture of
there'll be a
Broadway.
billion. There'll be
Yeah,
billions
it's
of
like
them.
being in Broadway in 1905, whatever it was. It's all
Or
horse,
cars.
and a
Yeah,
car
and then
turns up.
cars.
Oh, look at that! And you wander off. And 10 years later, there are no horses.
Yeah, but this is going to be on a much shorter time period.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. No, absolutely. Right, next one, infrastructure. So again, things like domain-specific models are going to become more important. What do you think about that? About specialization or customization?
Yeah, I would call it specialization or customization of AI for industries and also for businesses. And basically, the point here is that like you now have the opportunity to almost create the kind of like solutions you want, working with expert companies, in the way you want it, with the way you need it to be done. And I think that like the winners are the ones that are going to be using that, basically creating their own versions of it using established technologies, but then they can have something which is actually like work exactly as they want, rather than using generic basic stuff essentially in different ways. And I think that's the key thing, right? There's going to be the more and the faster people can kind of like get the task done from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and move up the value chain. It's just going to be much better,
What is the
basically, right?
confusion
So
though between like machine learning, training a model, inference, and then giving a model context?
I think basically the whole thing is context engineering. Okay, so this infrastructure is basically you need to have an ability to do the context engineering and scaffolding for your model. What does this mean? Basically, AI's got expert general knowledge. But for example, within our company, we created basically a digital colleague called Neo. I think it's like a 80-page
Neo's
prompt
nuts.
or whatever. Like, it's like an 80 page.
Amazing, me. That is unbelievable.
It's like an 80-page prompt, okay? But what that is it's specifying all of the frameworks that we use, how to format a document, how to analyze, how to prioritize. All of that is basically our own infrastructure, basically, which then you can apply that with Claude or Gemini or whatever it is, and then it can output either interface or analysis or whatever you want. But the point is, it's all codified. Now, GPT or Claude by itself, if we gave it something, wouldn't come up with that output. But that plus that, because it's been context engineered, is able to do that. And I think that is a very powerful idea which can kind of be built for more companies, basically.
And the last one is power. Now, this might sound slightly esoteric, abstract, but it's really important. If you think about all these data centers being built in models, GPUs, now hopefully there'll be some algorithmic invention that means that you don't need as much power, because the human brain uses a few watts in it. It doesn't need a data center. But then again, the human brain's not as effective in some ways. But power. So unless you have more electrons, right, and literally more electrons, you can't develop AI. And the way they're kind of scaling the models now is purely by just scaling the infrastructure. So that's one. So you're going to see governments, and they're going to have to, especially if you're a country where
Every company has to be
leading
sovereign.
models,
Every country,
yeah, every country is going to
every country needs. I mean, like I was this year, wasn't it? Yeah, I was in Portugal, and the electricity got shut off because it was buying it from Spain, and the internet got shut off because they shut down the mobile thing. So there was a day with a basic blackout, basically. Now imagine when you get into the place of, like, I don't know, warfare or different things like this, every country has to have its sovereign intelligence and sovereign power. And, you're going to get moved to the place where, like, next to, AI factories, essentially, they'll have their own power station or solar or whatever like this. I mean, China's way ahead of the curve on this,
Well, I
basically,
mean, it's
right?
in that graph of, like, I mean, we haven't got it here, but it's almost like a 30% line growth of US power output going out into the future, and China intersects it and literally is going up at about double. It's insane, and literally, and it's very hard to catch up. It takes you 4 or 10 years to deploy a nuclear power station. They've got these kind of small modular reactors now, which are like in a container. You can put them next to a children's playing ground, apparently. So there'll be more and more of those, more sustainability. But the countries that get ahead in terms of power are going to get ahead. AI.
Yeah, you need to have your own sovereign infrastructure. So I think like point number 7 that we talked about like industry specific models. It'll also be national models, basically, right? Like, so all of that's going to be there, where every country wants to have their independence and not necessarily just pay taxes to the Silicon Valley companies, basically, isn't it?
So I would summarize all of this, right? Whether 2025, 2026, going out into the future, I think about Aalok as like, there's like a dam and there's this pressure building up against it, right? And you're seeing, things squirt out or go over the top, and you're seeing it happen. And it's going to come a day where that dam breaks, and every organization, every country, every organization, let's leave it there for today, is going to have to buy this technology from somewhere and understand it and deploy it.
And do a profound reorganization of their talent and team,
Right.
basically.
Yeah. And if you don't, you're going to fall behind.
Yeah. So like, if you're a company which is not adopting AI, maybe your smartest people will leave you for a company that is. Like this is a prediction for next year, basically, right?
Like, go and work somewhere where they can spend more time doing what it is they entered that career to do. So that's actually really important. So whether that happened in 2026, I'm not sure, but you're going to start to see all these things begin to creep in, all of them essentially. So I think it's going to be a big year for us. Let's see how we do this time next year. Right, that's it. Ooh, a bit of longer on this one. So again, please leave us a review. You've had 12 months to do it, and we really appreciate it. It helps. We really appreciate you following. The podcast has grown massively this year. We're down to like 60,000 downloads in some of them. We've got more guests. We've got some more big guests coming around next year. So please continue supporting us, and please just share it. Let people know that this podcast is made. It's a practical AI podcast, as opposed to some of those talking about this sort of abstract. And have a great holiday, and we'll see you again next year.
See you next year.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Implement AI podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how we can assist you and your business in leveraging AI for growth and efficiency, visit our website at implementai.io. Don't forget to subscribe to the Implement AI podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.